Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. I am on location here at Toledo Central Catholic High School, where Ohio State's latest commitment in the class of 2024. This guy right here, Marc Nave, is how it's pronounced correct for those people out there wondering. 6'4", 312, 13, 14 pound offensive lineman who, Marc, I want to just talk a little bit about the big picture of your recruitment before diving into the decision to commit to Ohio State, because I'm wondering, about 2 months ago, Justin Fry came to your school on a Friday afternoon, expecting to watch you play basketball.
Right.
And ended up spending a very short amount of time here compared to what I think he thought he was going to spend here, because you weren't playing that night because you had missed some practices with other obligations. Did you feel like you maybe missed your opportunity there with him? And then when he called you 3 days later and offered you a scholarship, how shocking was that?
Honestly, with him coming to my school, I felt like he was just trying to see me in person for the first time. Not really like as me like playing that game, because I had visits that week. So, and I wasn't at practice like you said, but I think that was just really him just like getting to know me a little bit, getting to really see me in person, because like a lot of people can't tell like height and all that type of stuff just off like film. So and then with the scholarship, like 3 days later, it was crazy, like because I wasn't expecting it at all. But
when he calls you and says, "Hey, are you expecting him to be like, sorry, I didn't spend more time"? I mean, and how did he go from like I'm visiting to I'm offering that quick? And because I know some of it was just to size you up a little bit, and sometimes film is misleading, as you mentioned. Like you're listed at 6'5" on your Rivals.com profile, probably closer to 6'4.5". So I think they're always kind of looking at that, and you're not alone. I mean, Bryce Young is listed at 6'1" or something on Alabama's website, and he's 5'10". So is it? How did that moment take you by surprise, and what did it mean to you when that finally happened?
Honestly, because that day I didn't go to school because I was sick. So I was actually just at home, just relaxing. And then once Coach Dempsey called me and told me to call him, it was like, because like I just had talked to him a few days before that. So it was like, I don't know if he's just trying to like, just give me like some dates to come down and just really get on campus. But after he talked to me for like almost like 15 minutes, he finally told me, and it was crazy. Like I was shaking after he told me. Like it was a crazy thing for me and my family, because this was just one of my biggest goals was to play at Ohio State.
You grew up an Ohio State fan. You grew up, pictures of you probably in Ohio State jerseys running around when you were a little kid, probably wearing number 5 Braxton Miller jerseys and something. And then yesterday, the day you commit to Ohio State in person, Braxton Miller is there, right?
He was there,
helping some quarterback recruits get around the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Did you get a chance to talk to Braxton? If you didn't, I'm sorry, but if you did, what was that like?
I actually didn't, but I seen him like right there. I was like down the hallway. I was like, "Oh, it's Braxton Miller," and I wanted to go say something, but we had to continue on with the visit. But I seen him, and I seen Paris too. Was another guy that I watched throughout high school, and it was just great. It was great to meet him.
As I watch your film, there's a little bit of Paris in your game, and by that I mean there's just Paris is one of the nicest kids that I've ever covered off the field. But on the field, he was not very nice. Sometimes played a little bit hot. And I see that in your film a little bit. Myself and Bill Landis from the podcast are going to break down that film and give a little bit of analysis right now. Bill, Marc Nave, 6'4", 300, and right now about 315. He wants to get down to about 305, he said. But if you look at that film, this is a kid that is violent and moves really well for his age.
Yeah, I think watching it, powerful was the word that came to mind sort of over and over again. Just the way he moves people, like very heavy-handed, seems to understand leverage quite well in addition to that. So, he's a guard, right? But when you watch him move, I don't know, like you could convince me he could play tackle. He seems to have the length for it too.
Yeah, he's actually a little bit longer than he looks on film. That's my first thought that I had when I saw him in October over at Central Catholic. I was like, man, he doesn't look. He looks like a short 6'4", but he looks longer than 6'4", which doesn't make sense, but it does. He was 400 pounds as a freshman in high school, so
Whoa, really?
yeah. So he's lost a lot of weight in the last 2 years, and is still trying to refine the frame. But what you see is a kid that playing right guard almost exclusively in his film. Like, he understands how to move, very effective in pulling, very effective when he gets his hands on someone, like not letting them go, but also not holding, and driving through them, which is just something that I think it doesn't happen a lot for a high school offensive lineman.
That's crazy that he was that heavy not that long ago. Because I follow him on Twitter, and I sort of have seen the transformation that he's kind of put out there. It's remarkable, but to know from where he started from makes it even more so. He reminds me a little bit of like build wise, like in terms of being a shorter guy but longer arms, like Donovan Jackson. I think kind of has that, but then two in sort of play style, maybe more like a Matthew Jones, like a lower center of gravity, just people mover that I think lends itself more to being a guard or maybe even a center. But when you're talking about a guy who has he says he has like a 6'9" wingspan, for a guy who's about 6'4", that is enough length, I think, to play tackle. And also he clearly has the feet for it too, if you watch him playing for Toledo Central Catholic.
Yeah, he's a basketball player, very good on the hardwood as well, similar to a lot of the big-bodied offensive linemen Ohio State's recruited in the last few years. The player comparison that I had in my analysis on OhioState.Rivals.com was Billy Price, and that's a kid who he's a little bit barrel-chested, kind of stocky, but like it's the word that you used earlier, that powerful, is the one that strikes me. Like when he hits a guy, that guy moves. And that is where, I think back to Billy in his time at Ohio State and really see a lot of the same type of play there. Matthew Jones was another guy I looked at and thought maybe it could be this way, but I think Mark is potentially a bit more athletic than Matthew. And were Nave from a place like Erasmus Hall, where, Matthew Jones came out, that has been an established prospect developing station, I think you'd see a higher ranking. I still think you should see that ranking go up right now. Rivals.com has him as the number 14 player in Ohio and the 13th ranked guard in the country. But he was really unknown until about 2 months ago. Ohio State offered at the end of June. And I thought it was interesting talking to him today was that Ohio State went to see him, and Justin Fry went to watch him play basketball, but Mark had missed a couple days of practice because he had been on college visits. And so he didn't play. And so Fry had to leave essentially a little bit earlier than thought. And I was wondering if the kid thought that maybe he missed his opportunity, but I think that, he got a call 3 days later and he was offered. So Ohio State clearly saw something. And from what I've talked to people there, every time they've seen him, every time they've seen film, like early in the season to middle of the season to end of season, he got better each stop, which really was the reason and the rationale for Ohio State to pull the trigger on the offer. And you can definitely see it. If you watch that film from the start of the season to the end of the season, there is a significant improvement in confidence, competence, and just the way that he handles his business.
Yeah, and you like that he's playing against some good teams too in some of those game clips. I agree with you. I even seeing where he's ranked now is a bit surprising to me. I don't know, maybe people were waiting for that physical transformation to happen. It clearly has and will keep happening. But from just like a pure football ability, like the kid seems to me like someone who should be, I don't know, flirting with like a top 150 kind of overall ranking. I know interior lineman, there's a little bit of a ceiling on there if that's where people project him, but certainly a guy looks like he's going to rise up the rankings. And also, like, I don't know, he plays for a winning football program. I don't think that's nothing. I think when you can get a kid that is that talented but also knows what it's like to compete for championships, that's even better.
Yeah, he won a state championship this past year with Toledo Central Catholic. He's a player that Greg Dempsey, the head coach over there, is counting on being a leader heading into this offseason and into his senior year. He will not be able to enroll early at Ohio State. That's like most private schools around the country. They do not allow that to happen. But if you're looking for an area to get better from here until the summer, till Ohio State fans will see him at camp, what do you see on film that you're like, okay, that's where I would like to see this improve?
I would just like to see him in more like pass rush situations where he does have to kind of like solo block guys, and maybe those are hard to come by, I suppose, when you're playing on the interior. But if he comes into a camp setting, even if Ohio State doesn't really project him long term as a tackle, I'd like to see him get some reps at that position just to kind of see what it looks like, because I think sometimes when you're recruiting offensive linemen, particularly in the Midwest, like maybe you're not always going to get those like super long guys, almost look like they're basketball players, but you can still find some positional versatility. Even like Ian Moore, the guy they already have committed, in addition to Mark, I think is a guy who could potentially play inside if you wanted to. So I think getting a feel for what that versatility is actually like would be important for Ohio State.
Yeah, and he's, as you mentioned, the second offensive lineman committed in a class where Ohio State should take 6, and that is going to be one of the bigger storylines of this entire 2024 recruiting class is, do they get that 6, and are the next 2 also in Ohio with Deontay Armstrong and Devontae Armstrong? Marc Nave talked with me about his interest in being a recruiter for Ohio State and how he's already been reaching out to some of those guys. But if you see that and you realize that this is a really pivotal year for Ohio State to restock that position group, it makes a lot of sense to go hard after a guy like Nave right now, because as you already said, like this tape shows a kid who is pretty darn good, but is really just starting to figure out what to do on the football field.
Yeah, I think he honestly is going to explode a little bit, and rightfully so. And I also think it's good for Ohio State in a cycle where I think even last year too, there were more than normal amount, I think, of offensive linemen who you can convince yourself might be Ohio State caliber. But for Justin Fry to identify the 3 that he did last year, and I think to really focus on the guys that he's focused on now, as opposed to letting that play out and letting other teams get into that mix or convince them that Ohio State doesn't want them for whatever reason, I think that's going to be to his benefit in the long run too.
Yeah, it's the idea is, if you're going to offer this kid in September or November, you're better off just offering him now.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the linemen in the state that haven't had an Ohio State offer, and people ask a lot of questions about Luke Hamilton, who's committed to Michigan, or William Satterwhite at Akron Hoban, who has not received an offer from Ohio State yet. Like, that's kind of telling. Like, they've clearly identified the guys that they think have the longer term upside and have not hesitated to offer them. And the thing about that is, Nave didn't camp at Ohio State last year. Yep. The Armstrong twins did, but they were about 255 pounds. So whatever Ohio State saw on film out of those guys clearly struck them differently than what they saw at camp from Hamilton last year, on film from Satterwhite, who did not camp with the Buckeyes last year. So I think there's a lot of people wondering, like, when are you going to pull the triggers on these other offers? But I think if they were going to, then they would have already.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And I think there is still room for some of those guys to develop a little bit differently. But what I'll say, like, from my very much amateur eye, like having watched some of the film on those guys, seeing a couple of them in camp, just the in-state guys, Nave, I think, is by a pretty significant margin the guy I like the most.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the upside. The frame is really good. First time I saw him, he reminded me a lot, just facially and how he talked and acted, of Michael Hall. Yeah. So he's got a body that, as we mentioned, he's been trying to refine over the last couple of years. And once he's done shedding weight and start to be able to build it back up the right way, one of the things he talks about with me on the interview today from Central Catholic was how he's excited to work with Mick Marotti and how he realized, like, this is the best way to get where he wants to be physically. There's just a lot of baby fat on this kid right now, and he plays mean, he plays strong, he plays very, very aggressively. And I think for Ohio State fans, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about him now that he's commitment number 4 in the class of 2024. So, Mark, we watched your film. We've seen the relationship develop over the last few months with Justin Fry. I know you told me that one thing you found about him is that you really like his sense of humor. Yeah. You just like kind of chatting with him.
Yeah.
What, has he told you a joke? Does he have like dad jokes? What makes Justin Fry funny?
I don't know. I feel like he's one of those guys that's just naturally funny. Like the way he talks, the way he presents stuff, you know what I mean? How he goes about everything. You really can't see him being like, like you can tell when Fry is being serious, you know what I mean? Like he's one of those guys, like, he's a real playful, goofy guy, but when it's time to work, he's all in. So
how important was it for you on Tuesday, Ohio State's first spring practice, not just to be there, know that you're a priority for them and all that stuff, but to see the way he held he helped run the Ohio State offense, to see the way that he handled his offensive linemen, to see his coaching style in person. How important was that as you thought on your way home, do I want to go public with this?
Yeah. I think it was really big for me because obviously I got offered only back, at the end of January. Right. So I had no experience with Fry before that. I went and visited the Indiana game.
Yeah, November.
Yep.
Right.
So I never seen Fry coach, like really coach. So it was real big for me. And going in there, I sat in the meetings. He broke everything down to the players. Real straightforward guy. He doesn't do too much when he's trying to explain things. He's not going to tell you a million different things while you're trying to learn something. So that was a big thing that I liked about him too, is that he's straightforward with his teaching. And then once we got out to the practice field, like he's really precise and direct on what you did wrong and how you did it wrong and how you can fix it at that moment. You know what I mean? Like right then and there after you make the mistake. You know what I mean? He's constantly coaching you right next to you. As soon as you make the mistake, he's running up to you, telling you what you did wrong. Whether it's indie drills or whether it's inside team run, half line, he's always right there coaching, and that's what I loved about it. Him and Coach Celine too, assistant offensive line coach.
I know from talking to you heading into the visit, I don't think it was really in your mind to commit this soon. Like maybe end of the spring, maybe. But what was it about this visit and the opportunity to sit down with Justin Fry, to sit down with Mike Soleni, to sit down and get to actually know Ryan Day for the first time, which you haven't had a chance to do before Tuesday? What was it about this visit that was like kind of blew the top off and said, hey, I got to do this now?
I would honestly say, like they always say, the brotherhood, like everybody's real close and they can really push each other. And with the strength and conditioning coach, McMurati, him giving that talk about like we work hard, but we do it every day. Like it's a consistent basis, you know what I mean? And you have to, once you come here, like if you don't want to work hard, you shouldn't come here. And I feel like that really made me like really make that decision. Like this is the best. Like I can play against the best people every day in practice. I can get coached by the best in the nation, and I can get developed as far as like my body and my athleticism by the best strength and conditioning staff and trainers and everybody that's on that stuff that helps those players develop. So that's what really made me go through with everything.
So now, I mean, you're commitment number 4 in the class. You're one of 2 offensive linemen in the class. Ian Moore, the offensive tackle from outside of Indianapolis, is the other. Have you talked to Ian at all? I know he sent you a congratulations on Twitter, but had you guys had a chance to chat before this, or was this the first thing?
This was actually our first time. He actually just texted me a few minutes ago trying to get to know each other. And I'm already trying to get some of the other in-state guys to try and, make that move to Ohio State.
That's going to probably be Devontae Armstrong and Deontay Armstrong, the twins over at Lakewood St. Edward.
Yeah.
Have you played them last year?
Yeah, we played against each other. I didn't get to go against them in the game because we both offensive linemen, but we played against each other last year. So,
now, are you comfortable in that role? I mean, being a recruiter is totally different than being a recruited player, right?
I mean,
and you certainly don't want people in your ear telling you, hey, let's go. But you got to encourage it a little bit. How important was it for you, and how underlined was the message from Ohio State that you're in Ohio, you're a kid from Ohio that the Buckeyes have offered, you can't go anywhere else? Not that you couldn't if you chose to, but that they wouldn't want you to.
I feel like it was a clear message because you don't want to go too far from home. This is the best program in the country, and you get to stay at home. It's only like 2-3 hours away. So I feel like it couldn't get any better than that. And, the first really big program to take a chance on me and to really believe in me. So I feel like I just had to go through with it and not have any other, not saying that it would be fake, as far as recruiting, but, these guys really have intentions and really believe in what I can do. So I just had to go through with it.
What motivates you now? I mean, obviously, you work the last year plus to get offers.
Right.
And then as you start to get attention, the question goes, how do I get the big boy offers, right? How do I get Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, et cetera, Penn State? Then you get offered by Ohio State, the team you grew up dreaming of.
Right.
Then you get to commit to them on the first day of spring practice in 2023. You now, you're here at your school getting ready to go work out and with your team. And what motivates you now to make sure that this isn't the end of the Marc Nave recruitment / development? This is really the beginning. So what's your why, I guess?
Honestly, I would say obviously I came from being like almost a 400-pound player my freshman year. I had to lose all that weight just to be in order to put myself in this position. But I would say like everybody that doubts me, everybody that doesn't think that I can do what I can do, the rankings, all that type of stuff, being an underlooked player, I just feel like it just drives me to be the best. I would probably say my family drives me too. Just trying to just really just become the best version of myself and just, prove to myself that I am, who I say I am, the type of player that I am before I prove it to anybody else. So,
how cool was it for you to walk into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday with your parents, your grandpa? Like, what was it? What did that mean for them? Like,
it was great. My dad, big Buckeyes fan, he recorded everything. I was there. My mom, same. My granddad, he's a real huge Buckeyes fan. He's been a Buckeyes fan for almost his whole life. So it meant a lot to them, and it meant a lot to me.
You played against Luke Montgomery. You kind of know Luke a little bit, and Luke knows everyone. It's kind of a running joke. Like, there's not a player in the country that Luke isn't. Luke somehow played basketball against everyone in the country. I don't know how he's done that. Who else did you get a chance to talk to inside the program, player-wise, and how comfortable did you feel with just the way that those guys are as people? Because that's obviously a big part of the process. Those are the guys you're spending the next 5 years with.
Right. I got to talk to Donovan Jackson a little bit because they were just in meetings, and then after that they got occupied with practice. So I got to talk to him a little bit. Obviously Luke, Josh, and that was about it.
As you grew up watching Ohio State football outside of Braxton Miller, what players did you watch and say, hey, that's a guy I see myself? I could play that role. Was it offensive lineman? Was it defensive lineman? Who was it?
I watched a million players at Ohio State that I liked. To start off, like Braxton Miller, like four, time comes four, it'll be like Chase Young, and then like Paris, DeJuan, Matthew, Pat Efline, Thayer, Jonah, Josh.
A lot of NFL dudes that you're talking about, right?
A lot of great players. So, I always looked up to those type of guys and just tried to take stuff from their game and try and implement it into mine. So,
you wear number 55. Is there a reason for that, or is it just the number you got assigned when you were a freshman and you kept it?
I actually didn't have 55 my first 2 years.
5'5". See?
Oh, yeah. I didn't have 55 my freshman or my sophomore year, so I just got it my junior year. But it was my first number for football that I ever wore, so I just kind of stuck with it. So
we had Luke Montgomery on one of the episodes of this show, and Luke wore number 55 in high school, and then he wanted to wear 55 at Ohio State, but then Matthew Jones returned for another year, so Luke can't wear it, so he's wearing 51. But by the time you get there, Matthew Jones will be gone, and now you may have to just, can fight Luke about it, which would be pretty wild. You initially you had planned on visiting Ohio State on the 25th of March. I assume that's still going to happen, and the spring game as well, now that it's committed and locked in to the decision. What's the biggest change around Central High School today? You're walking around, you make the announcement at like 11:30 Central, the Central Catholic time, not Central Standard Time. Central Time. How did everyone react? What was it like?
It was great. Everybody just telling me congrats and, giving me support, reposting it on social media sites. So it was great to see that from all my Central Catholic family.
Was it hard to keep it quiet? Like you and I've talked a bit over the last few months. I know there's other people in the media you've chatted with.
Yeah.
And then you go home after Tuesday, and then everyone's like, "How come Mark doesn't want to talk?"
Right. Yeah.
And were you just trying to like not let it out, or what?
Yeah, I don't say anything about like my recruitment or anything to anybody because I'm not that type of guy. I don't like to, I wouldn't say brag, but I just don't like to put it out there as much like by saying it. So I just couldn't do it. But like after I told Coach Day like I'm committed, I just wanted to get it out like as fast as possible so I could just really start going back and just really getting to know everybody really good. So,
what did you think of Ryan Day? I mean, again, that is the first real opportunity you talked to him. I know you were there for the Indiana game, but those pregame moments are hectic as all get out, and you don't really get a chance to talk to the coaches.
Yeah.
You've been building a relationship with Justin Fry and Mike Seleni, and now you have the first opportunity to go into Ryan Day's office. Was it nervous? Did you know when you walked into the office you were going to commit, or did it happen while you were in there?
Honestly, when I first walked in there, I was thinking like, this is crazy. I'm about to sit down with Ryan Day, but he's a really cool guy. So when I was talking to him, it just felt like I was having a normal conversation. So once he was talking to me and stuff like that, saying like the expectations and the standards and all that comes with committing to Ohio State, he was like, we don't want to like push you into any decision. We want to make sure that you're fully comfortable with this because we don't want you to decommit or to make second guesses about the commitment. So, just hearing them talk about like what Ohio State has to offer, their plan, what they got going on, it was just hard to pass up and not commit that day because I had intentions on committing once after the spring practice as soon as he offered me back in January. You know what I mean? But like they said, they just wanted me to really see everything before I made a really big decision, and I understood that because once I was going through everything, I was like, this is really important to really get to know everything and, everyone there. So.
I don't normally ask recruits about what their coaches, their high school coaches' reaction was, but because I know Greg Dempsey fairly well, he was one of my high school baseball coaches in Toledo back a long time ago. We're talking 27, 28 years now. How did Coach Dempsey react, and what did it mean? I know the last Central Catholic football player to go to Ohio State was Jamie Thompson. 11 years ago. Prior to that, Dane Sanzenbacher, who obviously Ohio State fans, Sanzenbacher's in a lot of these photos on the walls out here.
Hall of Fame.
What was Coach Dempsey's reaction, and what does it mean for you just to be a Toledo kid to say, I'm going to Ohio State?
Once I called him after I told him I was committed, this was like as soon as I left to visit. He was just hyped for me, like really stoked up that I made the decision. Like, Coach Dempsey, obviously he's been there through it all as far as like my recruiting process and my high school career. So he's seen me work and change and develop to the player that I am. And I give a lot of big thanks to him for that and the rest of the football staff and Central Catholic community because they really changed me into the player and person that I am. So, but yeah, he was really hyped and, he was just giving a lot of congrats and stuff like that. And being from Toledo and going to Ohio State is, a crazy feeling for me because not a lot of people do it. So, I just want to just really take that, take that weight and, actually go try and, try and perform my best,
make it mean something.
Right.
You will put on the hat of a recruiter. Some of that's going to be in Toledo. Carter Lowe over at Toledo Whitmer, a 2025 offensive lineman who's offered by Justin Fry basically the same time you were. And Carter. You guys have talked a little bit.
Yeah.
Does it make it easier to recruit a kid like that who's from the same city and that someone that you're like, hey, you're my guy, let's go?
Yeah, for sure. Because I actually played basketball against him back in when I was like maybe in like 7th or 8th grade, but I never played against him. He was just on the team that we played against. We have conversations here and there. So yeah, it's definitely an easier type of guy.
Well, you are someone, Mark, that a lot of people in the city are going to be paying close attention to now for the rest of your life. I mean, that's sort of a heavy weight, but as you said, like it's an honor to have that opportunity, and I am grateful for you for taking some time and sitting down and talking with myself and those of us at the podcast. And we look forward to seeing what happens next. See you back at Ohio State in a few weeks, and then spring game, and then summer camps. And is there any? I don't know if Central allows early enrollment. They do.
They don't.
So
I wish they did, but they don't.
So that's an answer for people out there wondering out there. Is it going to be here next January or is it next June? So looks like June, but we will talk to Marc Nave quite a bit more before then, I am sure. But for now, it's commitment day for him. He is just locked in and ready to rock and roll and ready to go back to being a normal high school student in the weight room. I'm going to let him do that. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.